Good evening to each and every one of you. I am getting ready to begin midweek. I am coming on, there we go. I'm coming on just a few minutes early so that I can share on a couple of other pages, and this will give people an opportunity to get on board as we prepare to share with you our midweek worship. Make sure that as you get on that you would share this as well. And we are, again, looking for the Lord to bless tremendously on tonight. Excuse me. And we can go from there. I'm trying to do some. Again, I'm a couple of minutes early. That way we give opportunity for some of you to get on board. It sounds like that old Ship of Zion song. Our prayer is that you are staying well. These weather phenomenon can be rather trying. And okay, we're hooked up there. Yeah, it seems as if at one moment it looked like all was well, and then the next thing you know, everything is falling apart. The weather is cold, it's rainy, it's whatever, but you know what? I completely and totally refuse to complain, because there are other areas in the nation. And so I'm thanking God that even in this cooler spring-like weather, that God will continue to keep us and to bless us. And I'm trying to do a couple of things here at the same time. Okay? And just going to do a couple of more things here so that we can get people on board. We're sending out the notices to let everybody know that we are going live. I've got 3 minutes before I will begin our good evening, Janet. How are you? We give God glory that you are with us on tonight. Did not the Lord bless over at Greater Friendship? My God, my God. I'm just excited about how the Lord continues to move in his own way and in his own time. And so we're grateful to God for that. Just give me a couple of more minutes here. I got 2 more minutes to go before we begin our lesson for tonight. And I'm just sending the invitations out. For whatever reason, sometimes when we get on, everyone, hey Cora, how you doing? Let me tell you, Cora, I appreciate you and Minister Avery for the things that you did along with Jaleesa and Katrina. What you did for us was priceless in preparing for these young starving people, and maybe not so starving people, but I'm grateful to God that you were kind enough to do that, and I am believing that God is going to reward your efforts like you have never seen rewards before. Sometimes when we sacrifice is when God, good evening, Carolyn Williams. How are you? this evening. You'll see me moving in a different way because I've got screens all over the place, and I'm trying to make sure that my leaders aren't cheating by telling me that, excuse me, that they are on, but they're actually not. And so I'm looking around to see if I've got everybody on here. And don't forget, if you don't mind, if you would please share, it would be overwhelmingly appreciative that you would do so. Well, time for me to begin. I'm grateful to God. Okay, Minister Murtis, I see you. We are grateful to God for the opportunities that God has and is providing for the people of God to come together. Hey, Alicia, how you doing? We're praying for you guys in Houston, Texas. I saw your daughter running. I was like, you run, girl. Good evening, Carletta. Good to see you. Good evening, Maria. We're grateful. Minister Sarah, good. So good to see so many of you. Minister Michael, I got my preachers on here. Minister Michael Williams. Oh, I bless the Lord. I'm excited. All my preachers is getting on here today, and so I'm grateful. Let me begin with this story, and I find this to be a very powerful story. Hey, Valerie, how you doing? Good evening, Sylvia Brown. Okay, I know, Cora. There was no need, but you know what? Every now and then, it's just good to tell people thank you. We live in an age now. Good evening, Laverne. And we live in an age now where people don't show any gratitude toward anything. And so I just felt it in my spirit, the necessity of telling you thank you. Tony Evans has, in his book, it talks about the strategy for battle. And it's a very powerful story that I want to read to you. There was a father and a son that were traveling across the Midwest. Good evening, Katrina. How are you? Katrina Williams. How are you? In a covered wagon. And as they were traveling, a fire broke out. A prairie fire broke out. And the father and the son were in the, hey, Debbie, how you doing? The father and son were out trying to outrun the fire, and they kept at it, and they were afraid, and all of a sudden they found themselves in a position where the flames from the prairie fire looked as if it was going to overtake them. And then all of a sudden, good evening, Cheryl, how are you? God bless you, man of God. Robert Jenkins, my friend, good to see you again. And in the midst of this, he did something that honestly didn't make sense. And the son was frightened, but the father knew exactly what to do. And so what happened was the father turned the wagon. And when he turned the wagon, he headed straight back toward the flame. And the son was like, okay, wait a minute, Dad. Wait a minute. We're headed back toward the flame. We're headed back toward the fire. I don't understand what you're doing. And the father would tell him, he says, don't worry about this. And all of a sudden they burst through the flame. Good evening, Elder, and good evening to each and every one of you. If I don't call you by name, good evening, Lady Harrison. Okay. And so we see this taking place, and all of a sudden he bursts through the flame and drives through the flame and gets to the other side. Now the son is spastic because he can't understand. And then the father tells him to jump out of the wagon with him and stand firm. And the son was saying, but the fire is almost here. The fire is getting ready to take us out. And the father grabs the son by the hand, because the natural reaction for the son is to run away from the flame. But the Father says, no, don't you run away from anything. Just stay right here. And the reason he did, the son began to cry. He was shaking. He said, but I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand. Why in the world would you have us run back into this area that has been burnt by the flame, because the fire is almost there? And the Father says to the Son, this spot has already been burned. Y'all gonna catch this in a minute. There is nothing left for the fire to grab onto. The fire will come near, but it can't burn again where it has already burnt once. When I read that, I about shouted all over the place. The boy was safe because he stayed with his father in a place that the fire could not reach. That's some powerful stuff right there. That's some powerful stuff. Good evening, Sherry. Some powerful stuff. I pray to God that you're catching what I'm saying. And so here's what we've got to remember. The boy was safe because he stayed with his father, because he understood that the flames could not reburn where it had already burned. Oh, bless his name. As Satan battles you in spiritual warfare, he wants you to step away from the ground that has already been burned in the spiritual realm, and which Jesus Christ has already been crucified for, and his resurrection has already secured our victory. This is what the enemy wants to do to you. He wants to get you to step out into an area that has not been proven, an area that has not endured the flame, and get you to be afraid. Good evening, Pat Axel. Good evening, Minister Avery. All of these things are happening, and I'm going to quit saying good evening to all y'all, because somebody going to get mad because I ain't call your name. Good evening to all y'all. I love y'all so much. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be there. And to my leaders, thank you for being here. And so we see here very clearly, if we stand firm in the center of the safe location, which is the cross, where victory has been accomplished, you can stand victoriously and Satan can't reach you. My God, my God, my God. Oh, I hear you. I hear you, Elder, talking about that's holy ground. And so what are we dealing with? What are we looking at? What do we need to recognize and to understand when we're talking about having victory in spiritual warfare? Well, this raises another question. How do you stand firm? How do you stand firm when everything else is falling apart? How do you stand firm where everybody else seems to be losing their minds? How do you stand firm when it looks like everything is against you? How do you stand firm when it looks like we talk about no weapon formed against us can prosper, but every single weapon seems to be pointed against us? Well, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 says, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. You stand firm by appropriating God's strength. Okay? And this is the thing that we've got to recognize and to see for ourselves. You can't do this in your own strength. You can't do this in your own determination. You can't do this. Okay? Good evening to each and every one of you. I just flipped over to the other page so I could see the rest of you that are on here. I thank God for you that are on my page, Union's page. We got people on the state convention's page. We got people on the district page, and we got people on the youth and young adult state page. And so we see his might. You got to remember something. You got to remember something when we talk about putting on the whole armor of God. You missed what I said. It's not your armor. It is the armor of God. It is the whole armor of God. And when you put on the whole armor of God, that's when you are able to stand. But when you're trying to do it in your own ingenuity or in your own skill sets or in your own experiences, you will find yourself sitting in the seat of failure more than you will find yourself sitting in the seat of success. Okay, I got to go back over some things because he does this in a very powerful way in Tony Evans' book. You got to know how to be strong in the Lord. You need to understand clearly how to be strong in the Lord. Please share this if you will. You got to learn how to recognize some things, okay? Because you got to remember, it's his power, is his authority that we are exercising. It is not our own. So now when we look at this, we got to go back to where all of this began. We got to go back so we can recognize how all of this stuff took place and how chaos and calamity began to permeate and infiltrate itself into mankind. And so we see here when God created man, he made a very significant decision. He created Adam out of the dust of the ground, and he said, let them rule. Catch what I'm saying. Let them rule. This is in Genesis 1:26, okay? By letting mankind rule on earth, God willingly imposed a limitation on his own involvement in human affairs. Catch what I just said. This is some powerful stuff. God did not create us to be puppets. God created us to have free will, but that will needed to be harnessed or tempered or directed under God. All right? But the problem was there's something else that took place here. And so what we see here is God limited his involvement in human affairs. He erected barriers where he would respond either good or bad based upon the decisions of man. That's what I'm talking about. Y'all catching this? It's a choice. And here's where we've got to get to the point, and we've got to begin to recognize that there's not another human being who can make us, who can motivate us or move us to step outside of the will of God. If we step outside of the will of God, it is because we chose to do so. And I know because we've been using other folk. We've been using scapegoats. We've been using bad relationships. We've been using bad marriages. We've been using all of this other stuff as a reason for us not to live the way God would have us to live. Okay. It was upon Adam, therefore, to use his God-given capacity to cultivate and rule the world. But in order for him to do that, Adam had to withstand the attacks of a sly serpent in the garden. You got to remember something. He gave Adam free will. He gave Eve free will. But the free will was to operate under the restraints. Yes, I use the word restraints. Under the temperament, under the guidelines of a holy God. Okay? Now, you got to remember something. It was up to Adam, therefore, to use his God-given capacity to cultivate and to rule. It was up to Adam. You didn't catch what I said. I didn't say anything about Eve. It was up to Adam to exercise his God-given ability to rule and to cultivate. It was up to Adam. Okay? And what we see here very clearly, Adam had to withstand the attack. And the problem was he dropped the ball. And so what we see here very clearly, as a result, Adam allowed the serpent to rule in his place. Why? Because he allowed the serpent to have a strong presence in the garden. He allowed the serpent to usurp authority over Adam, which caused Adam to shrink back in his authority and gave it to the serpent, who is over influencing his wife. Okay? Are y'all with me so far? Okay? And so what we see here very clearly, and he uses the illustration, a football illustration. He said basically Adam fumbled the ball and the devil in the devil's red zone, and the serpent recovered it. Here's what happened. What caused the fumble? Eve got out from alignment under Adam, and Adam got out of alignment from under God. See, this is where some of our hey Elder Carter, this is where some of our humanistic thinking has permeated itself into our fabric of society. And here is also where the abuse of authority that a man has in the midst of his relationship with his wife. You notice I didn't say his woman, because man has no authority over a woman. He only has authority with the wife. Okay, y'all will catch that later. And so what happened was Eve was seduced by the serpent, and the problem was in the seduction by the serpent, Adam stood by and watched the process without intervening. And so what happened was Eve has now slid out from under the authority of her husband due to the fact that the husband sits back and watches these things unfold without intervening in the situation. And because he was silent, because he did nothing, because he said nothing, he has now slid out from under the authority of God. And when he is misaligned, he also misrepresents who he is, okay? He let his family, yes, sir. First of all, Minister Sean, he let his wife down, which created chaos in the family. Okay, y'all. I know y'all not ready for this lesson on tonight. I know y'all not ready for this. And so this attack has been subtly implemented over decades, generations. And what happens is, because we have become so secularly minded, rather than us recognizing position, yes, there are abusive men. Yes, there are men that abuse their authority. And yes, there are women who will not subjugate themselves to a man because they have been in a very abusive relationship. But again, can I go back to what I said earlier? We are free will agents. So we choose to get into bad relationships, and the choices that we made are now affecting our behavior. And so once you get a hold of a bad apple, you don't want to bite one again. And so this is what's going on here. It was in Adam's, what happened was when Eve misaligned herself from her husband and Adam misaligned himself from God, we have a chaotic situation that is going on here. And guess what? It's still going on. It's still going on. We have men who are not aligned under God, and then we have women who are not aligned under their husbands because the alignment from the head is out of order. And by doing so and remaining silent and remaining complacent and remaining out of alignment with God, not only, Minister Sean, do we let the wife down, but now the children are misaligned because there's not one person in that family unit that has aligned themselves with the will of God. Teach, Pastor. I'm doing the best that I know how. And so what happened was the ball was stripped out of Adam's hands, was put into Satan's hands, and he took possession in the garden. When he took possession in the garden, so cataclysmic was Adam's fumble that Satan and his team went on the field and moved mankind from the place that they were supposed to be in. So we see here very clearly that mankind always stumbles. Mankind always fails. Mankind always finds itself in a detrimental situation every single time that they misalign themselves outside of the will of God. Okay? Are y'all with me so far? I'm looking at something. Okay, it recovers success. Bless the Lord. And so, and that's what's going on even today. You got to remember, people talk about trying to stop the devil. Well, if you're trying to stop the devil, he's obviously coming after you. He has the ball. He's calling the shots. He's running the show. He's setting the agenda, and the reason you're trying to stop him is that you are now on the defensive mode rather than being on the offensive mode. Jesus recognized this change in position by referring to Satan 3 times about he is the ruler of the world. John chapter 12, verse 31, John chapter 14, verse 30, and then John chapter 16, verse 11. Let me say them one more time. We got to see this very clearly. John chapter 12, verse 31, John chapter 14, verse 30, John chapter 16, verse 11. Because of Adam's fumble, Satan is the one who's calling the plays in the world. And of course, Satan can only govern the world within the sovereign boundaries that have been set up by God. Now, this is the powerful thing about God. He already knew, I got to go back before I go forward. He already knew that man did not have the capability to manage or to correct his own error. Here's what happened that was so powerful, because if you go back into the Genesis account, you will see something very powerful going on there. Because you got to remember, when they woke up, okay, when they woke up, what's up? When they woke up and recognized that they were naked, they took leaves from vegetation and tried to cover themselves. Now, here's the thing that messed them up, and they weren't really recognizing what had happened. The leaves that they used, once they were cut from the tree, were dying. Oh, bless his name. Which meant whatever the covering was would only be as good as the functionality of the branches or the vegetation that they had covered themselves with. Here's what you got to see. Whatever they had covered themselves with did not have the capability to cover them permanently. Here's what God does after he addresses the issue of what's going on in the garden. God kills 2 animals. When he kills the 2 animals, he takes the skin from the animals and places it around Adam and Eve, which gives them their covering. Oh, bless his name. I don't know who that was out there turning around like this. But here's the thing that many of us got to recognize and understand. And here's what many of us need to see. No matter what you temporarily try to do, it will never succeed, because all of us need a permanent covering. Oh, bless his name. I done got excited, okay? We all need a permanent covering. And so in the midst of all that's going on here, he has messed up. He has dropped the ball. He has done some things that are outside of the will of God. But yet still in the midst of this, in the midst of it all, okay, what has happened is God has provided something for Adam's fumbling. The good news is that we can get the ball back again. You can live in both hope and victory when you stand firm in the strength of Christ. You can force another fumble, this time by Satan. And I'm going to, and in this, you're going to recover the authority that you have already been secured in. Okay? And so here's what we got to, if you come to Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of your sins and for the gift of eternal life, he freely offers you, you have already forced the fumble. Oh my God. Oh my God. I wish I had somebody to help me, because I'm about ready to leap out through my office. I'm about ready to loot. Here's what you got to remember. Here's what you got to remember. And here's what you got to see. Through Christ's sacrificial atonement, we have already been repositioned for victory in our lives. Oh, Jesus, let me calm down. Let me calm down. Did did anybody catch that? Because of the sacrificial atonement, we have already been repositioned for victory in our lives. The victory does not come from our ingenuity, our capability, or our gifts. Our victory comes from the work that Christ did on the cross, which guarantees us victory, which guarantees us overcoming power. Okay? Remember, you are not fighting for victory. You are fighting from victory. Okay? And this is what you got to remember. You already have the victory. And so you got to quit fighting for victory because you've already got the victory. Oh, Jesus, Lord, I'm trying not to shout. I'm trying not to do that. Okay. And so here's what we've got to recognize. And here's what we've got to see in order for us to recognize some of these things overwhelmingly clearly. We need to understand headship and authority. Headship and authority. Somebody ought to shout that you already got the victory. Somebody should have got excited over the fact that you've already got the victory. Somebody should have said, I bless your name, Lord, that I've already got the victory. I give you glory, Lord, because I already. Now listen. Doesn't mean that attacks won't come. Doesn't mean that situations won't rise. Doesn't mean that the enemy will not try you. Does not mean that the enemy will not try to snatch your faith away from what you are believing Christ for. But what you've got to remember and what you've got to hold on to and what you have to be assured of in your own spirit is that you already have the victory. Okay, when God pronounced the curse to the serpent by alluring Adam out from being underneath his designated alignment, he coupled it with a prophecy. And here's what you've got to see, and here's what you've got to remember. Okay, he says, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel." In these words, God says, Adam, you have fumbled the ball. You have turned over rule of your life and others' lives to the evil one by moving out from underneath my alignment. Adam, you blew it. Adam, you messed up. Okay? But I've got some good news. This is where to shout. I've got some good news for you, because a woman is going to have a child. Oh, bless his name. A woman is going to have a child, and the child will have his heel hurt by the serpent, but the child is the same child, the seed of the woman will crush the serpent's head. A long time ago, my dad's church was out in an area called Springfield Township. It's out in the country, and the one thing that you have to remember, that in order for you to kill a snake, you got to chop his head off. Yeah. Oh, bless his name. Y'all didn't catch that. You can chop the tail off if you want to. It'll just slither away and grow another one. But if you chop the head off, you will incapacitate and totally destroy the capability of the snake to regenerate, because the power of his process is in his head. And so what God is saying, yes, he's going to bite your heel, but yes, her child is going to crush his head. The seed of the woman will crush the serpent's head. It actually means headship. What's going to happen is the seed of the woman is going to crush the headship or the authority of the serpent. Are y'all with me so far? With the coming of the seed of the woman, Jesus Christ, the headship, the rule, the authority of Satan, has been crushed, eliminated, gone. The heel of the seed was wounded in the process, along with his humanity on the cross. But when it was all said and done, Satan's headship was crushed, and Jesus Christ negated the devil's authority and rule. That's some powerful stuff right there. So, because of the works of Christ, because of what Jesus did for us on the cross, we already have authority. Our position has been renewed and restored. But the problem is, you don't know what you are until you learn what you are. Okay? Here's a funny thing, and I know I get on people's nerves all the time because I'm always talking about the importance of Bible study, the importance of Sunday school, the importance of Bible study, the importance of Sunday school, the importance of this, the importance of the Church Growth Conference, the importance of going to Full Gospel, the importance of going to OBSC, the importance of making sure that you're in some learning environment, the importance of this, the importance of knowing, the importance of gaining, the importance of knowing more. And I know it gets on people's nerves, but here's the problem. You will never know who you are when you're trying to teach yourself who you are. Yeah. You will know who you are when somebody who has been where you are has overcome where you are to show you the victory that you can have because they are already living victorious. I wish I had about 3 or 4 people in here that caught just what I said. The head of the serpent is crushed. He is eliminated. He is gone. And even though he had to endure what he went through on the cross, the reason he was able to overcome it was due to the fact that when he died on the cross, he was given victory. Okay? And that's why you've got to go someplace to learn something that you are not self-teaching yourself. This is overwhelmingly important for us to recognize and to understand. People don't feel that they need to go anywhere to learn anything. People are satisfied where they are. They don't understand, why in the world do I have to be bothered with this? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do that? The reason that I require some things to be done is because you've got to go someplace where you can learn who you are. If you can't learn it with me, then I don't know where you're going to learn it, because wherever I'm sending you, it's because I have confidence in the teachers to be able to provide for you what you stand in need of. Okay? The truth alone is not enough for you to know that you can get back in the offense of your life. On the cross and through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, he has already crushed Satan's authority. It's a done deal. It's over with. You don't have anything to worry about, okay? And so what we've got to recognize is something very powerful that many of us don't see, nor do we understand. Jesus Christ, through the power of the cross and resurrection, has ultimately vetoed the power of the enemy. Satan no longer holds final authority over your life. I told people about a song that they used to sing in my dad's church a long time ago, talking about, I beat the devil running and I'm glad about it. That is such a misappropriation of knowing who you are in Christ. One, you can't outrun him. Two, you should not be running from